Welcome to episode 81 of Rebirth Revolution. My name is Melissa Olson. Another week, another set of examples of the change that we surely must make, no matter how much people want to stay firmly entrenched in the ways of the past. We don't yet seem to be making much progress with the killing by law enforcement of our citizens. The stats show that law enforcement kills approximately 1,000 citizens each year, and that statistic has been pretty consistent since 2015. We need to ask ourselves what systemic change needs to take place for that number to change. It is important to remember that law enforcement is not meant to be the judge and executioner. Their job is to apprehend, which they seem to be able to do peacefully with some people and not others. Their job is to serve and protect. The attempt to justify the killings by finding any sort of dirt you can on the person killed is a heinous notion, since they are not to be the judge and executioner. They are to bring that person into the court system where calmer heads and the rule of law comes into play. It is also very troubling that the flimsiest of reasons are often used to pull people over, which is where all this drama starts. As a culturally privileged white woman, I have been pulled over for legitimate reasons and have never been asked to step out of my vehicle. I have enjoyed the privilege of pretty much being left alone and treated as non-threatening. I can't begin to imagine the terror that targeted people must feel when they have to interact with those who have so much power over them. Part of the narrative about law enforcement killing people is that it's such a dangerous job that they need to do this to stay alive. In terms of dangerous jobs, law enforcement doesn't make the top 10 most dangerous professions. It doesn't even make the top 15. You are much more likely to be killed on the job if you are in the logging industry, fishing, a pilot, a roofer, a refuse collector, a truck driver, a farmer or rancher, an iron or steel worker, a construction worker, or even working in the landscaping profession. Statistically, you are in about as much danger of dying in your job as a law enforcement officer as an average maintenance worker. But we don't grant special dispensation for all of the professions that are, in fact, more dangerous. In 2021, so far, 15 police officers have been killed by gunfire. They have killed 262 civilians. In those same 3 months, 148 civilians have been killed in mass shootings, with another 485 wounded in those same mass shootings. Here we are at a flashpoint. We need to decide if this is all just a part of living in this country that we love, or if we think we can turn some of this tragedy around and start doing things differently. We live in a violent world. We live in a country that was founded and built around violence. It's in our DNA. It's in our ancestry. It is one of the many human frailties that the students in this school were designed with, a frailty that we have the task of overcoming. We can either shrug it off and live in a constant state of fear, or we can dig in and do some redesigning. These events will just keep happening until we reach our breaking point. Only we can decide when it stops. The rage we feel is justified but it will ultimately consume us if we don't channel it into solutions. Part of what it will take to fix this will be involving everyone in crafting a solution. This is not the time to divide up into different sides and then cement our positions. A man who was in the job of training law enforcement officers once told me that the best cops are just a fraction away from being criminals. That at the time astounded me because I had been taught that there were good guys and there were bad guys. The cops were the good and the criminals were the bad. It was pretty simple. But I get it now. If you are going to catch a criminal, you have to be able to think like a criminal. As we have talked about before, we are all here in this school working from different levels of spiritual awareness. Those at the lowest grade levels have not yet developed empathy, honesty, or integrity. They are self-serving and unconcerned about how their actions affect others. This is the starting point for all humans. It is how the system works. Our task is to evolve over the course of lifetimes into a person who feels nothing but love and compassion for ourselves and others. Once we have reached the higher levels, we are no longer able to think the way a low-level person would think or feel the way a lower-level person would feel. In this school, we are all playing the same game, but we are all playing by different rules. People who inhabit the highest levels of spiritual awareness cannot be heard or understood by those at the lowest levels. The concepts of empathy, honesty, and integrity are of no use to them in their lives as they are living them right now. To them, those things are for suckers. But someone who is at a third grade level can hear and absorb what someone who is at a fourth grade level has to say. It's like a ladder that we're climbing. You can shout from the top of the ladder to someone below who is on the first rung, but there's nothing you can say that will move them from that step to the top without them having to climb each and every rung in between. So some of the people who know how to appeal to the people at the lowest levels of spiritual awareness are just one step above them. We need these people to voice their opinions about what drives people at the lower rungs and what might be done to move them out of the part of their curriculum that is doing harm to so many. If we want to fix financial systems, we need to listen to those who are proficient in scamming the system as it is. If we want to fix law enforcement, we need to listen to some who are steeped in the culture that is causing so much harm. We need them to be part of the solution, but we are also tasked with ensuring that they do not have power over others. They are not capable of using it responsibly. No one knows the loopholes and workarounds better than someone who spends their time dreaming of doing just that. You can't get that information from someone who is living a life of honesty and integrity. They just aren't working on that wavelength. And we need to get used to the idea that the solutions we try out will not benefit all people equally. That is a higher bar than we are currently capable of meeting. We are going to have to find solutions that help more people than they hurt. Once we get there, we can continue to refine until our percentages are better. We need to understand that there will be trade-offs. The ability to own an assault rifle may not be as important to our society as the ability to be in a public space without the fear of being mowed down. We will have to look at the numbers. We will have to make hard decisions. There is no way that everyone will be happy with what is done, but we must move into a world that is more peaceful and loving. One of the stories in the news this week that stuck out to me was the one of the Florida woman who was sentenced for her crime of coughing on another woman in their local Pier 1. As the story goes, the cougher had been bullying, cussing out, and threatening the clerks in the store for 15 minutes about a return she wanted to make. An interesting detail is that she wanted to return something that she did not have in her possession. She only had a picture of it on her phone. Anyone who's been stuck for 15 minutes behind someone spouting this sort of nonsense would probably agree that this was the first crime she should have been charged with. All of this is going down during the pandemic, and for her to harass clerks in this manner should have been the bottom for her, but it wasn't. Once she realized someone was catching her act on their phone, she flipped them off and approached them to cough in their face. The person on the receiving end of her maskless cough was undergoing treatment for a brain tumor. So the cougher storms out with her children who witnessed all of this. Prior to the cougher's sentencing, she wrote a letter about her experience. She told of a couple of very traumatic events that preceded this moment in her life. One was a near fatal boating accident, and the other was a fire in her home. At no point in a 23-page document is it clear that she has any concern for the woman she coughed on. Most of what she had to say was how horribly she and her family had been treated once this incident became public knowledge. The people in her community shunned her, and they stopped allowing their children to play with her children. She was most upset about the negative impact for her and her family. She issued the customary, "This is not who I am," and said that she never thought she'd be playing a starring role in a social media feeding frenzy. She doesn't feel she can move forward because others won't forgive and forget. But when is it appropriate to forgive and forget? It seems to me that people who are sincere in their regret and are more concerned about the person they harm than the sting of the natural consequences of their choices have a much better shot at being forgiven. It's not enough to say that I think you have punished me too much. Staying in self-protective mode instead of self-reflective mode is never going to get the desired results. Many people are sorry that they were caught doing what they did. Many people want to decide when they have been punished enough. This isn't in the hands of the offender. In general, people are shunned or punished by others to the degree that it appears that they either don't get why what they did was wrong, or if it appears that they have no intention of making better choices in the future. Being self-protective requires little bandwidth. Accepting the fact that you were wrong and need to grow requires discomfort and a concerted effort to do better. Not everyone is ready to grow when everyone else determines that they need to. One of the most disturbing things about this woman's store tantrum and assault is that she did it in front of her children. She is deeply concerned that the video was shared far and wide, but wasn't seemingly as upset about modeling this behavior for her children. Now the children are paying for the sins of the mother. While that doesn't seem fair on the face of it, I don't think I would want my children to play at her house either. She is unhinged on some level, and I know I wouldn't be comfortable with her having the opportunity to behave in that manner in front of my children. It is the job of each parent to keep their child safe, and it is our job to determine the environments where we think that will be the case. The bigger question for me is how her children will process this upheaval in their lives. Is her debacle the event that will teach them the value of treating others with respect and care? Or will they learn to interact with others the way their mother does? It's a powerful lesson either way. And here's another red flag in this story. She seems to justify her behavior because of the two traumatic events that had happened in her life before this particular event. Every person in this school will experience traumatic events. There really is no way to avoid trauma. When trauma doesn't soften you and make you more appreciative and sensitive to what others go through, you are working at a low level of spiritual awareness. That place where it is still all about you. It's like when you buy a red car and drive around and notice all the other red cars that you never noticed until you bought one. When you have been through trauma, you realize that so many other people are also in that same condition or have been through it and come out the other side. It makes you more aware of how fragile life is and how tough we all have to be to get through it. If trauma leaves you with a chip on your shoulder instead of deeper wisdom, you are doing it wrong. But that is the curse of being a resident of the lower levels of spiritual awareness. You just can't quite get the deeper lesson that was embedded in each experience you have. You come away with an attitude that is sure to create more trauma. As you reach the higher levels of spiritual awareness, you realize that everything that happens in your life can be turned into growth. Those at the lower levels do the opposite. A higher level person can take the harmful actions of others as the information they need to figure out how to be quite different, since they see the harm that is done. A lower level person will simply emulate the harmful behavior that they witnessed. Everything you witness and experience becomes the decision point where you decide how you will use that knowledge going forward. I'm not holding out a whole lot of hope for the transformation of this particular woman, but I do hope that at least one of her children is here to be a pattern interrupter. There will be much time to reflect as their mother spends 30 days in jail. Thanks for returning for another week of Rebirth Revolution. I really appreciate your time. Let's keep breaking down the chaos that surrounds us and keep our eyes open for the glimmers of light. This podcast can be found everywhere podcasts exist, as well as on YouTube. Full episodes also play on our Facebook page. Let a friend know about our weekly get-togethers. Everyone is welcome. Until next week, stay in the fight for justice. Pray for healing. Be super kind to store clerks and wear your mask. Remember, you are loved exactly as much as every other person on the planet, not 1 ounce more or 1 ounce less. Stay strong and safe and compassionate.